Are you tired of your browser tracking you and saving your history? Try AmnesioPath, a lightweight browser that keeps things simple. No history, no tabs. Cookies? You decide. Toggle them on or off. No distractions. Once you close it, everything resets. No saved sessions, no lingering data, and if you don't trust that, good. I'm going to walk you through the entire code myself. So, we have the browser here, and if you press the skull icon, it's going to exit with a toast. And if you open it, you can search, and whatever you search, it's going to default to DuckDuckGo as its search engine. So it's always going to search everything on DuckDuckGo. So that's one layer of security. Another layer is you can clear cache. You can toggle cookies. If you toggle cookies, right now they're enabled. So because they're enabled, you can try to sign in and it works. But what if you disable cookies? Now let's restart and try again. Cookies are disabled, so they can no longer track you, and you can no longer sign into Google. Also, we have a settings button, which has this about section, dialog, and you have why use AmnesioPath, the philosophy behind this browser. You can read this, and that's about it. You can exit the browser using this button or using this skull button. And as you can see, there is no history button because it never saves any history. Yes, so you don't have to worry about the history anymore. And yeah, that's about it. Now let's dive into the code and actually see how it works behind the scenes. Now I'll walk you through the directory for this project. First we have Android manifest, and in this I changed the icon, default Android icon, with an imported asset, which I showed you how to do in another video. You can find the link to that video in the description. And then we have the navigation, the screens, and the main activity. So the navigation has your nav graph and your nav host for hosting navigations. And you have the screens, which is the main screen, and a setting screen, which has credits and nothing useful for now, but we're going to add that in the future versions of this app. And the main activity, which has the app nav host being called, and it sets up the entire navigation for this app. And then we have the build.gradle.kts, which has dependencies, and I only added one dependency, which is Android X navigation, composed Android version 2.9.6. And then I also added this asset, which was the home screen, and that home screen has this HTML page. So if you don't know HTML, you can find the link in the description for that video too. And now let's get into the main code for this project. Now let's understand the main screen composable, which has a parameter on settings click, which is a function which will help us navigate to the settings screen. And we have all these variables which will make more sense if we read the rest of the code. So we have the back handler. This will be used when navigating the website. So if you swipe left to go to the previous page, it's going to make sure it does exactly that instead of exiting the app. So when WebView reference can go back is true, then it'll go back. Otherwise, if it's the only screen, if it's the home screen, then it's going to exit the app. And that's back handler. Now let's look at scaffold. So the scaffold is basically your entire screen, right? As you can see, it's got all of this code inside it, and so it has a top bar. So our top app bar will have a title, and in this title we'll have a row, and this row will fill max width and would be centered vertically, and inside it we're gonna have a box composable, which would be the skull icon, and we're making it clickable with indication null so that you don't see that it's been pressed. It's been clicked. So when it's pressed or clicked, the activity would be finished and your app will close. With this toast, AmnesioPath terminated successfully. That's going to happen. And you have this outline text field where you can actually type what you want to search. So when is focused, then the URL would be empty, and when the committed URL is equal to our asset, this index.html, then it's going to be the outline text field would be empty so that we can type whatever we want. Else it's going to show the committed URL. And on value change, URL would be whatever we type. Single line is true, text style is white, color is white, and font size is 15 SP. And the placeholder is a column with a vertical arrangement .center with value search or enter address. And then we have the modifier, which is going to fill the maximum width. The padding is 2 dp, height is 52, on focus changed. The URL would be empty. So whenever you click the search bar, it's going to go empty, even if it's got a URL inside it. And the shape of this search bar is a rounded corner shape. And keyboard actions define what happens when you press the done or enter button from the keyboard, and it's set to go for searching URLs. And then we have the keyboard action so now we define what on go is going to do, and what it's going to do is it's going to change the value of the committed URL, which would be displayed here. So the committed URL would be, if URL starts with HTTP or HTTPS or with a file, then it's going to be equal to URL. Yeah, so it's going to be the actual value of the URL. And if URL contains dot, then it's going to open like a website, https.google.com. So if you write google.com, it's going to convert itself into HTTPS and two forward slashes and google.com. So it's going to basically, it's turning your raw URL to a proper URL which can be searched, or whatever your search query is, it's turning it into a URL. Yes. Otherwise, if you don't provide your own HTTPS or a website with .com, then it's going to search whatever your search query is using the DuckDuckGo search engine. And after that, on Go button is clicked or the enter is pressed from the keyboard, it's going to clear the focus. Then we have the action buttons. So actions, in actions parameter, you're going to have a box which would have an icon which is MoreVert or triple dot. And you have this drop down menu. So the drop down menu would have a clear cache like you saw, and toggle cookies, settings, and exit. So exit is just finish affinity again, activity.savecall.finish affinity to close the application. The settings has show menu false, and it's going to call the on settings click, which I told you before right here. And it's going to navigate the app to settings screen. So that's settings and toggle cookies. Before that, let's look at clear cache. So clear cache is a drop down menu item, and it's got a text clear cache, and it's got on click WebView reference.clear cache is true, and it's going to make a toast cache cleared, and then it's going to turn show menu to false, which is going to make the show menu disappear, make the drop down menu disappear. And then there's another drop down menu item, toggle cookies. So on clicking this menu item, the cookie manager would be initialized with the current instance. And yeah, we got an instance of a cookie manager, and then we got the current instance of the cookie, accept cookie, and we are going to set accept cookie to not current. So whenever you click the button, it's going to toggle. If it's true, then it's going to turn false. And then we make the WebView reference accept third-party cookies and pass it the WebView, which can be passed using it, and accept is not current. Like I said before, it's going to toggle it. And then it's going to make a toast, which is going to show cookies enabled or cookies disabled, depending on what happened. And then it's going to close the menu. So that's it. That's about the top bar and the action buttons. Now we have the padding and the Android view, the most important thing in this application. So you have the modifier, which is going to fill max size, and the padding would be padding, which we define here. And then you have factory, as you saw in the previous video, where it was called how to make a video call app. In that video we used Android View 2, and we're using it again for displaying our web pages. So we define a web view with context. So this context is defined here. Val context equals local context.current context, or .current. And Then you have WebView reference equals this. This was also defined above. Right here, WebView reference by a member is null by default. Okay, so it's fairly easy from here on. So layout parameter. So the width would be match parent, and the height is also match parent. So the parent here is, yeah, it's going to extend to the complete screen below the search bar. Below the top app bar, it's going to take the entire width of the screen and the height of the screen. And then we're going to configure the settings. Settings.javascript enabled would be true, JavaScript would be enabled, and DOM storage would be enabled. You can turn it to false, but it's going to break things, a lot of things. Like the YouTube sign-in won't work, and among other things, that's one of them. And then you have set support zoom, which would be true. Load with overview mode would be true. Use wide viewport, true. Built-in zoom controls, true. Display zoom controls would be false. And then you have cookie manager, get instant, accept cookie would be false at first. So yeah, it's going to be false for now. And then we're going to have clear cache would be true. So we're going to clear the cache even before loading any web page. It's going to clear the cache. And it's also going to clear the history, which doesn't even exist actually. So it's super secure. And then we have this WebView client inside the WebView. And then you load URL, committed URL. The committed URL, which is defined here, but is changed constantly right here. After you search anything, it's going to change. And we're going to load that URL. That's about it. And then we have this update. So whenever the WebView.url is not the committed URL and the committed URL is not blank, then it's going to load your new URL. And that's it. That's your main screen.kt. So this was your activity, and we used it to close the application in various parts of this code. And then you have the show menu, which we used to show the drop-down menu, and WebView reference to manage the settings of the WebView. And yeah, that's it. Is focus to manage the focus. Focus basically means like you press into the search bar, it's gonna show the cursor, and if you click away from it or press away from it, it's gonna get unfocused. The cursor would not show if you do that. And then we have this settings screen. So it's fairly simple. Settings screen just has a composable called settings screen, and it's got an on back parameter, which is a function which returns nothing and takes nothing, and we give it a value which is nothing. And then we have this show about dialog and show origin dialog, which are variables which are false right now. And we have the top bar, a fairly simple small top bar, which is nothing, which has nothing but a title called settings and a back icon. And that back icon, when clicked, would fire up the onBack function, which we define in the app nav host or the nav graph right here, as you can see. the nav controller would be pop backstack, and it's gonna close. It's gonna pop that screen, and we're gonna get back to our main screen. Yeah, that's it. So where were we? Yeah, we were here. Column. So you have this column with padding equals to this padding, and it's going to fill the maximum size. And inside this we have those list items that you saw before, which were about AmnesioPath and why use AmnesioPath, with the horizontal divider that you saw again in the preview. And then you have these two if blocks, and inside these if blocks you have this alert dialog, which on dismiss would switch it to false, and it's gonna close, and on confirm it's gonna close again, of course, and it's gonna show this text developed by me, the Gen Z dev, and you have this title about AmnesioPath. So yeah, that's it. Alert dialogs, a title and text, and confirm button, and on dismiss request. That's the structure of an alert dialog. That's how you define it. And then you have show origin dialog. And in this alert dialog, you have the same switching of show origin dialog variable, and it's gonna close it. And you have this damn confirm button, and you have title, the philosophy behind AmnesioPath. You can read it here too. The text is another text composable, and this is what it is. And yeah, that's your AmnesioPath browser. So this was a fairly short video. Okay, wait. We have these object routes in the nav graph, which will define our strings for the screens, basically the locations. So you have the main and the settings, and you're going to define an app nav host. It's got a start root, and it's got a nav controller, nav host controller object, and we're going to pass it remember nav controller. Inside it, you have this nav host. You're going to pass it the nav controller that you define here. You're going to give the start destination to start route, which is routes.main, which is basically the string main. And then this composable routes.main, this is where you define the main screen and call it. This is where you define, this is where you call the main screen with this function on settings click, which is going to use the nav controller to navigate to settings, which is again, settings string. And then there's another route, composable routes.settings, and when it's fired, it's going to open a settings screen, our settings screen composable, with this function nav controller dot pop backstack. Yeah, it's going to give it that, but remember that it's going to be fired only when you press the back button right here. Yeah, so if you press the navigation icon, which the icon is arrow back, where the icon is arrow back, so when you press that, on click is going to call the on back function, which we passed using the nav host inside here, nav controller dot pop backstack. So it's going to pop the screen of the stack, and we're going to return to the main screen. And yeah, that's all about AmnesioPath browser. So subscribe to the channel and like this video.